Welcome to the CBD podcast with the CBD Woman, back again, Rachel Wilson, one of the world's foremost authorities on CBD. Brought to you by the Botanical Factory, makers of natural CBD. How are you this week, Rach?
I'm really good, thank you, Dave. And how are you?
I'm fighting fit, thank you very much. Yeah, it's great. The sun's out and everyone's happy, so fantastic. So I just wanted to pick up, I had to listen back what happened last week, and I was talking about, it occurred to me is in England and the UK, why is it that there's not so much CBD or hemp grown in the UK? Is there any particular, because I noticed a lot of it comes from Europe or from abroad. Why doesn't it get grown here as much?
So basically, the laws in the UK are very fragmented around cannabis and hemp, and they need to be updated. Really, they're out of date. These laws came out over 100 years ago, and they were based on evidence that actually is now being found to be untrue.
Such as
that cannabis is being classified as a schedule as a drug because they say that it's got a propensity for abuse and it's got no medicinal value. However, that law is obviously not correct because it has got a medicinal value, and it's quite hypocritical, really, and ironic that now they've got medical. You can now get cannabis on prescription, on a private prescription from a medical cannabis clinic. So obviously, it's got medical. Obviously, it's medicinal. Also, the government, GW Pharmaceuticals, are the biggest exporters of cannabis, marijuana, around the world for medicine. So they produce Sativex.
Sorry, say that again. So who? The government, did you say?
So GW Pharmaceuticals, whose one of their main investors was Theresa May's husband. They basically got a license from the Home Office to grow high THC cannabis, and then they make Sativex, which is a prescription, which is like a cannabis spray that gets you very, very stoned, but it's good for pain and things. And they export that out to other countries, and they're making absolute fortunes off of this. So, it's really hypocritical that they're growing cannabis on a mass scale and making millions and millions of pounds, but yet Joe Bloggs, who grows a little bit in his garden because he's got arthritis, goes to jail for it. It's very, very disjointed. It's not fair at all. It's just, it's a little bit like, so yeah, if you want to grow hemp in this country, you have to get a license from the Home Office.
Right. And how much does that cost?
Oh, it'll cost a fortune, and I think maybe it's more about who do you know, Okay. Do you know what I mean? Rather than, so I know a lot of,
Allegedly.
Yeah, I do know some people that have got the licenses, but I know other people that have tried and they've just not been able to get it. So the thing is as well is that even if you do get that license and you're allowed to grow hemp in the UK, what they do then is when that hemp plant is growing, you've got the stalk, you've got the seeds, and you've got the bud. Now, the bud is not legal, but the stalk and the seeds are. So what they will do is, when they've grown this crop, they will make them destroy the bud because the bud is not legal, but the stalk is.
But the bud is where, I guess,
flower.
That's the stuff where the people smoke it, and that's the more powerful. It's more potent, I guess, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, like on a hemp plant, the flower, the CBD bud on the hemp plant is not going to get someone stoned because it's very low THC. It's not going to have that effect. But people do smoke it because they find it very relaxing because it's CBD. So it's just another form of taking CBD, but it is illegal. So you're not allowed to sell it. You're not allowed. So yeah, it's this is the thing. It's just ridiculous.
There's a lot of hoops that you've got to jump through.
Yeah.
But let's say I got the license and everything. What's the terrain like to grow in the UK? Is the UK, and I'm not advocating that anyone grows it, but is I guess there's a lot of farming that goes on in the UK. I mean, what are the conditions? I guess I'm asking is why it's all imported from abroad usually.
Yeah, it's just mainly because people can't get a license to grow it. That's the only reason. I mean, it would grow here very well. You can get different strains of hemp. So there'll be certain strains that will grow better in this climate than others. So yeah, it's just mainly because people just aren't allowed to have a license for it.
Okay. So another question that came to me during the week, and I've heard this term used. What is CBD topicals? What does that mean?
So CBD topicals is just basically a CBD cream or a CBD balm or a CBD massage oil. It's something that you would topically put onto your skin. So the great thing about topicals is that you know, if you've got an area of skin that needs some attention, maybe you've got arthritis in your fingers, maybe you've got eczema, maybe you've got psoriasis, maybe you've got some joint pain in your elbow. You know, some people, when they first, you know, hear about CBD and cannabis, and they're a bit scared to use it internally because they don't know how it's going to affect them. So they feel a little bit more comfortable with a cream, especially the older generation. They'll think, oh, well, I'll put a cream on because that's not going to hurt me. And then when they start to use the cream and they realise, oh, it's really beneficial, it's helping to clear up my eczema, or it's helping my arthritis, it's giving me the flexibility back, then they might then start to use it internally, because like with botanical factories oils, you know, if you're taking it internally, it's going to go all around the body, so it's going to help with sleep, mood and pain, whereas the topical is just going to go on that particular area. It's going to absorb through the top layer of skin, attach to the cells underneath, and just be for that area there.
Right. So it's like, yeah, so it you know exactly where it targets, the areas that it targets,
Yeah.
and how it gets in there. Okay, so that's just one way of consuming it. I mean, what other ways are there of actually using it? I know there's you mentioned last week about pipettes. Is that, how do you do that? Do you put it in your ear?
Yeah.
No? What do you do?
Yeah, so you've got a CBD oil,
Yes.
like botanical factories, which you would drip underneath your tongue.
Okay.
It's going to absorb through your mucous membranes in your mouth. It's going to take about 15 minutes to get into the system, and it'll last about 4 or 5 hours. So with an oil, usually people will use it twice a day, once in the morning, once late afternoon.
How many, like a pipette, what's that? Like 6 drops? How many would you put on?
Yeah, so this is the thing, is that every single company will be different because they'll all have different size bottles. And as a general rule of thumb, if you've got a 10ml bottle and it's got 500 milligrams of CBD in there, each drop will be 2.5 milligram. Okay. If you have 1,000 milligrams in a 10ml bottle, each drop will be 5 milligrams. If you have a 2,000 milligram bottle, a 2,000 milligram in a 10, it'll be 10 milligrams. So it's not that the 2,000 milligram is stronger than the 500 milligram, because it's the same oil, it's just it's got more in it. So you imagine like you have a pint of milk and a 4-pint bottle of milk. If you're making a cup of tea, it doesn't matter which one you use because you're using the same amount. So you can get, you know, if you're using 10 milligrams a day, you can get 10 milligrams from a 500 milligram bottle, a 1,000 milligram or a 2,000 milligram.
Okay. So we've had a couple of questions from the first episode, which was very encouraging. Thank you very much for all the questions that came through. And the big, and it's bizarre, the big question was, is CBD good for you? And I know you're an advocate, but how committed are you in terms of what percentage of you that it works for you? I mean, you say it works, but can you give us a couple of stories of instances you've seen, specific examples of somebody who's actually used it and what's happened and what they were suffering from and what happened?
Yeah, so one of my customers, I'll give you an example for a child. One of my customers, his child was 2, is autistic. He would get very, stressed out and upset, couldn't handle his emotions and things. So he started to give him some water-soluble CBD, which is what you would put into your drink.
Okay.
So he would put it in his drink, and he's been using it. He's 5 years old now, and he uses it all the time. And he's had a period of time where he didn't use it for about 2 weeks because we were out of stock, and he just said you can really tell the difference when he's not using it. So as an example, if he's playing a board game, when he's using CBD, he's happy to play the board game right till the end. Mm-hmm. Whereas if he's not using CBD, he's halfway through, he's throwing the board up, he's getting angry, he's getting frustrated, can't cope with it. So yeah, that's one example how it helps with children. It helps just keep them calm. Mm-hmm. Also with arthritis, I've had women that come in, men as well. And the fingers are just massive because of the arthritis. All swollen up.
Swollen knuckles.
Yeah.
And the like. Yeah.
Yeah, and then one of my customers, she's been using it for years now, and all her fingers are completely normal now.
Right.
So it just really does. I've got people that have had cancer, and I'm not saying it's going to cure cancer. I'm not saying that at all, but it just gives a better quality of life, and and at that end of life period, you do want to have a good quality of life. You want to be able to eat. You want to be pain free. You want to just feel all right, and a lot of my customers will come in and say, they've passed away now, but I'm so glad that they had the CBD at the end, because it just really did make a difference. So yeah, I've had people that come in and they've been crying in tears because of they're depressed, they're anxious, they don't want to leave the house, they don't want to take the kids to school, they can't cope with life. They don't even know why they're feeling like this. They're just, they've had enough, or maybe somebody's died. They're grieving. And then I'll see them a few weeks later, and they just say, "Do you know what? I just feel so much better." I'm taking the kids to school. It's just wonderful how I just feel sort of normal again, really. Just because I think, especially with depression and anxiety, it can be like a cloud. So it's as if like the CBD just lifts that cloud a little bit.
Wow. Hold that thought. It's time for a commercial break. You love it when I do this, don't you? And it's a word from our sponsor, The Botanical Factory. Now, they are makers of some superb CBD oil that takes you right to the true essence of CBD. So the team at The Botanical Factory uses the latest techniques to bring the purest form of this ancient therapy to you. Ancient therapy. I like that. This stuff is really great. Their farms grow the plant that possesses the highest concentration of CBD, cannabis, sativa. From plant to bottle, every step of their manufacturing process is transparent. They use MCT as a carrier oil. It's a high-fat oil packed with nutritional benefits extracted from organic coconuts. They use this beautiful golden brown liquid because it's clear and odorless. Unlike other brands, this means your CBD experience is pleasant and natural. And the real genius bit is this. CBD is fat soluble. So when it's mixed with MCT, the vital cannabidiol doesn't get broken down and wasted in your gut. More of the CBD goodness reaches your bloodstream. Is that right? Is that what happens? Yeah. Wow. It's also important to know that they use CO2 extraction, which means they use pressurized carbon dioxide to suck more of the naturally occurring cannabinoids out of the raw hemp plant material. You get more of the good stuff. So in a nutshell, check out the Botanical Factory because it offers you a more natural experience. And their website is www.thebotanicalfactory.com. They believe in the power of nature. So thanks. That's very much. I love one of the words they talk about, that ancient thing. And you mentioned it last week. It was growing everywhere. What do you know about the history of it in terms of the use? Do you have any do you know a lot about the history of CBD?
It's been used. Hemp and cannabis have been used for thousands of years. I'm sure, I don't know if it's the Aztecs or different tribes, used cannabis in the rituals, so yeah, it's been used for thousands of years. I can't remember which king it was, whether it was King Henry or King Henry VIII, but one of the kings always made sure that hemp was on the ships. So it was grown it was probably one of the main crops that was grown in England, because it was used for material and it was used for all sorts.
Yeah, I think the sails and the ropes and stuff were made from it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been used for thousands of years. But what's happened is GW Pharmaceuticals, who spoke about on the last podcast, who have got a license to actually grow high THC cannabis. They are actually a competitor to the CBD industry, but what they did was they lobbied the government and said, we need to get some regulation here with this novel foods license on CBD, because they want it to be regulated. And we want it to be regulated. We want consumer protection. Sure. We want, if people are selling it, we want to make sure it's being sold legitimately, like Botanical Factory, making sure it's all tested at a laboratory, that it's CO2 extracted. So yeah, but what they were saying is that it's a novel food, because even though it's been used for thousands of years...
What does that mean, novel food? What does that mean?
Novel food means it hasn't been eaten as a food or consumed as a food in recently, over the last sort of, 10 years, 15 years or something like that. So, I'm part of a lot of activist group, and, we did lobby them and say, it has been used as a food. Here's all the evidence, but they would not accept that at all. So it's categorised as a novel food, which means now it has to have this licence, which means that, in essence, it may make the products that are available after the 1st of July, or anything after the 1st of July is only allowed to be sold if it's got a novel foods licence. Okay. So it just means that some of these products aren't going to be as effective as the full spectrum, because a lot of the full spectrums will not be allowed to be sold. So,
and what would you recommend is, like, if you're new to CBD, right? It's a new thing, and I know you sort of saying go to an independent buyer. We have no opinion on that sort of stuff, but I guess what would you recommend that people try first? If it's like, I'm new to CBD, what should I do? What should I do first? What's my first action in terms of testing out what's right and what's right for me?
Yeah. So you want to make sure that the product that you're buying has been tested at a laboratory. That's first and foremost. You want to make sure that the labelling is very clear to understand. So it's got serving suggestions on there. So it may say that it's got 500 milligrams in the bottle and one drop is 2.5 milligram. If they don't tell you how many milligrams there is per serving, then, don't buy it, because you need to understand how much you're taking. So as an example, if you were buying a 500 milligram bottle and it said 2.5 milligram a drop and you were having 10 milligrams a day, it's going to last you for 50 days.
Okay.
So then, if it's like, £20, £25, it's affordable then to use it. So some people are very, very sensitive to taste, though. They really do not like the taste of anything. So an oil in the mouth might not be appropriate for them. They may be better off using a CBD gummy or a CBD capsule. And CBD gummies and CBD capsules, they've just got the CBD oil inside them. Okay. So, a lot of the older generation, they do like the capsules because it's a little bit like taking a vitamin, or supplement.
We're all used to that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Whereas, a lot of people now, they like the gummies because they just taste nice. Some people will vape. There's CBD vaping. I would say that vaping CBD is good for mood. But if you're looking for pain or, for severe depression or sleep, it's better to take like an oil or a capsule.
I guess that when you said about mood changing, you said those words, people can get a little bit maybe apprehensive when they say the mood changing. Is that the major benefit? I mean, is that the psychoactive element of it coming through? What does that mean? How does it change mood?
Yeah, so I always have difficulty with this. So when a customer comes in and they say, how am I going to feel? You're not going to feel any different when you take CBD. You're not going to feel like, oh, wow, hey, mate. You're
not going to redesign Sergeant Pepper's cover.
No, you're going to feel exactly the same as you normally do, apart from that cloud of anxiety or depression has lifted, or that pain has gone. So you've not got those sort of niggling things that are interrupting your well-being. So yeah, you feel exactly the same. You feel yourself, but just with a better night's sleep, without the anxiety, without the depression, without the pain.
So would you say that, I guess, for the last 100 years, right across the Western world, that because CBD or hemp or cannabis has been kind of removed from the usual diet, like you said, it was part of the food chain, is that perhaps we've been missing that symbiotic relationship that we have with that? Do you think that's part of the problem? The ills of the 20th century and the 21st century. Would you say that's maybe perhaps played a part in that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I think that there hasn't been any sort of natural alternatives for people to try. They're not allowed to grow it in the garden, so you're not allowed to sort of take responsibility for your own health. If there's something wrong, you have to go to the doctor, and then the doctor will give you some tablets. And there is a massive addiction to some of these tablets and these pharmaceuticals.
The opioid crisis is massive in the States and elsewhere.
Yeah, and it's it's not good for people to, like I said before, pharmaceuticals, I don't have a problem with pharmaceuticals. They are necessary in certain circumstances, but I think people need to have a choice, do I want to use a pharmaceutical or do I want to use a natural alternative? And we should be allowed our human rights. We should be allowed to make that choice ourselves. Unfortunately, they haven't given us that choice. But obviously, over the last 5-6 years, as CBD has been in the industry, more and more people are starting to make that choice for themselves and benefiting from it.
Sure. Okay, well, look, that's enough for this week. Thanks very much. If you've got any questions, get in touch. Any questions for the mighty CBD woman? Thanks again, Rachel. Just to finish off, you've been listening or watching the CBD podcast with the CBD woman, Rachel Wilson, one of the world's foremost authorities on CBD, brought to you by the Botanical Factory, makers of natural CBD. So, Rach, lovely to see you again. We'll be here this time next week, and maybe we can talk about. I'm interested to talk about the fear and stuff that comes with association. So maybe we can touch on that subject. That'll be fun. Right. So thanks very much. See you all next week.